Good afternoon, everyone. So, the story that we are going to share to you is entitled On the Road, published in 1957 by the prominent Beat Generation writer Jack Kerouac, that recalls his cross country travels with his friends across the US in the late 1940s. So, this story explores the concept of society, freedom, and most of all, friendship.
The novel On the Road was written by Jack Kerouac. His original name is Jean-Louis Lebris de Kerouac. He was born on March 12, 1922 at Lowell, Massachusetts, US. He is the youngest of the three children of French Canadian immigrants from Quebec, Canada. Jack Kerouac is an American novelist, a poet, and the leader of the Beat movement, also called the Beat Generation, which is an American social and literary movement originating in the 1950s. They spoke out against racism, war, and consumerism while they embraced drug use and homosexuality. He is best known for his novel On the Road, published in 1957, which became an American classic pioneering the Beat generation in the 1950s.
Now, here are the major characters in the story. First is Sal Paradise. He is the narrator and he is a young writer. Next is Dean Moriarty, the hero, a reckless, energetic, womanizer young man from Colorado who has been in and out of jail. Next is Carlo Marx, a good friend of Sal and Dean, a brooding poet who is sensual and energetic. Next is Mary Lou. He is Dean's first wife, a pretty, dumb blonde from Colorado. Next is Ed Dunkel, a tall, affable friend of Sal and Dean's, not too bright, he'll do anything Dean says. Next is Galatea Dunkel, Ed Dunkel's serious, disapproving, newlywed wife. The next one is Sal's aunt. She is tolerant, supportive, and kind. Sal lives at her house in Paterson, New Jersey, and Long Island. Throughout Sal's wanderings, she sends him money. Next is Camille, Dean's second wife, for whom he divorces Mary Lou. Loyal Camille lives in San Francisco with her Dean's children. Next is Lucille, a married woman in New York whom Sal wants to marry for a while. Inez, Dean's third wife, a sexy brunette he meets in New York. Next one is Victor, the kind, polite Mexican man, Sal's, Dean's, and Stan's guide when they went in Gregoria. The next character is Remy Bonjour, an old friend of Sal from prep school. Remy is a flamboyant Frenchman. He is a petty thief and gambler, constantly in debt and extravagant, and sometimes gallant and generous. The next is Denver Doll, a Central City friend whom Sal sees all over town. Eager Denver Doll shakes hands and makes sometimes incoherent pleasantries.
Okay, so hello everyone. Let's now move on to the summary of the story On the Road by Jack Kerouac. This story began when Sal Paradise met Dean Moriarty. And of course, as this story was based on the author or Jack Kerouac's own experiences and autobiography, Sal Paradise is actually a pseudonym for Kerouac. He used the name Sal to represent himself in this story. And Sal Paradise is a young writer living on the east coast of the USA during the 1940s. And he's actually a divorced man. And he just recovered from illness when he met Dean Moriarty, a very chaotic young man. Okay, so Dean Moriarty is actually described as a bad guy or a badass in this story because he is actually an ex-convict and was recently released from prison when they met each other. He's the one who breaks the rule of the society through stealing cars for fun or taking drugs. That's why this story also revolved on drugs or taking up illegal drugs. However, this characteristic of Dean, instead of getting away from him, for Sal, this is a charming point for Mr. Moriarty. Okay, now as Sal finds Dean as a charming one, he or they become friends, and he was inspired by Dean. So Sal was inspired by Dean, and he was eager for an adventure. And at the time, now, when they met, Sal decided to live his life to its fullest by meeting up with Dean and their friend Carlo Marx, based on the poet Allen Ginsberg. So in true life, this Carlo Marx was actually a pseudonym for Allen Ginsberg. He's a poet, a prominent revolutionary writer during the 1950s when Chuck Kerouac was writing this on the road story. Now, in continuation, in Denver, he meets up with Dean, Carlo, and others, and they attended crazy parties and hold long introspective conversations through the night. So, this friendship is actually a common friendship that we witness during these times, like doing crazy things and everything when you are with each other. So, there, however, Sal left Denver again and he traveled to San Francisco, where he met and reunited with his old friend called Remy Boncourt, until Sal decided to hit the road again and met Dean. So, in reuniting with his old friend, old friend Remy, they had work, dead-end jobs, and struggles to make and meets. So, they had work and had struggle. That's why Sal again hit the road and then he went to meet Dean. After meeting each other again, Sal and Dean went on crazy adventures where they traveled across America by hitching rides, stealing, scamming, and picking on women. So they have done many crazy little things when they are together. Now, in the winter of 1948, during those travel across America, Sal decided to visit his relatives in Virginia. So they separated again. But however, Dean unexpectedly arrived with his first wife, Mary Lou, having abandoned his second wife, Camille, and their newborn baby. At this time, Sal at once felt the urge to travel again, and he knows that Dean will tempt back him to the road. And then, Dean offers to transport some furniture between Virginia and Sal's aunt's house in New Jersey, and they make the journey in two disorderly trips. Upon returning to New York, they drink, party, and listen to jazz. Actually, despite that he had a wife, and he had left Camille and their newborn baby, Dean and Sal just went on the road again, and then they did party, drink, like nothing happened. Like Dean had never had a wife. Now, Dean, Sal with Marilu then drive to New Orleans, where they stay with a drug-addicted friend, Old Bully. based on William S. Burroughs, because actually it was because he's associated with drugs. Then he also had a friend, drug addicted friend, this Dean. And then there in New Orleans, they went there. And then after that, in the New Orleans, actually at that time, Dean ditches Sal and Marilu. So iniwan niya si Sal and Marilu, and then he returned to Camille. So mag-isa lang po siya na umalis doon, and then binalikan niya si Camille. At that time, Sal then felt something, like there's something wrong with their friendship when Dean just separated from them. So, doon na nagkaroon ng haka-haka na parang may mali sa friendship nila ni Dean. But, however, kahit ganun pa rin, Sal reunited with Dean again. So, again and again, he reunited with Dean. And then, there, Sal, but however, when they reunited again, despite nung after niyang iniwan, after they reunited, Sal began to realize that Dean doesn't care about anyone but himself, though he can't help but enjoy when they are together and go on with crazy adventures. So, ganon. Kahit na parang may mali sa friendship nila, wala pa rin siyang magawa kasi he enjoyed those kind of crazy adventures. Now, until then, nung pagkatapos ng mga travels nila, after those travels, Dean left Sal in Mexico City. Now, he abandoned Sal in Mexico City and he himself returned to the US. After the continuous times that Dean just abandoned Sal, at that time, Sal then finally understood that Dean is a bad friend. Like, he was exhausted with that kind of friend wherein he will just be abandoned at all time. And then, after that, just because he just realized that Dean is a bad friend, Sal returned to the US, and then he fell in love with a woman named Laura, and then they planned to move to San Francisco. So, Dean had heard this plan and promises to help him move. When Dean heard this plan of marriage, pinuntahan pa rin niya si Sal at nagkita sila. However, lahat ng plano niya na tulungan sana si Sal sa marriage, everything of that plan fell apart. Eventually, kasi naghiwalay si Sal and then si Laura. Eventually, Dean must travel back to the West. And in the end, nung nag-travel na si Dean, in the end, Sal could only sit in a pier and stares at the sunset, reflecting on Dean Moriarty's unforgettable impression on his life. It was because they had a good and bad friendship altogether. They enjoyed each other's companions. However, they fell apart in the end. And that's the summary of the story On the Road by Jack Kerouac. Thank you.
Moving forward to the figurative languages that is used, or literary devices that is used in this text or in this story, we have the metaphor. We all know that metaphor is when two things that are dissimilar are compared to each other to describe a common characteristic. The narrator describes the still gray serpentine of a river below the road. When the river is called a serpentine, it is not meant literary. Literally, it is metaphor that describes the thin, meandering shape of a river. The river. We also have personification is when something that is not human is attributed human traits. The man recalls the conversation he had with his wife just before she committed suicide. The woman said, "I've taken a new lover. He can give me what you cannot." The man replied, "That is not a lover." In this example, that personified is compared to a lover, making it both an example of personification and metaphor. Lastly, we also have the hyperbole, and they were the silliest shoes in America. I walked in the least likely place in the world. Obviously, the narrator has no idea if they are the silliest shoes in America. How could he? Still, this statement conveys the sense that he is fully and absolutely engaged in his life. Nothing is small to him, and everything is the most. This is an interesting use of hyperbole, as it is being exaggerated in a negative sense, showing that hyperbole can go both ways. That's all for the figurative languages used. Thank you for listening.
Okay, so my part here is to share with you the themes of the story. And on the screen, we have here the followings. But first, let's tackle first the freedom, travel, and wandering. So, have you ever think of the reason why the title itself entitled "On the Road"? Did you guess, or there's something in your mind, why is it entitled like that? So in the story, it tells about the journey which emphasizes the importance of traveling. And Sal and his companion wants to enjoy the freedom through traveling. So the second theme is the friendship. So in the story, Sal chose his friends over himself. Why is it? Because kung kahit saan siya pupunta or mag-hang out, he always call his friends na lagi niyang kasama. And ayun, friendship ang nauuna dito sa stories. So the next one is privilege and prejudice. The ideal world of Sal and friends is one of freedom. From obligations, from the laws and police and etc. Yun yung gusto nila, yung ideal nila. However, all has a flip side. It is kabaliktaran. Kasi they predicted the freedom as na lack of freedom. And it is generally attainable because of their privileged status as white males of America. Dito naman sa dreams and memory, when he or the boy have nightmare, they are just an extensive of present, where the worst has already happened, but in his good dreams, the man returns to happy memories of the past and the world of the nature and his wife. So, dreams and memory. Next is faith, trust, and doubt. Harsh world of the road. Everything depends on trusting or distrusting. Depends on the person whom you trust. So faith, trust, and doubt. And dito naman sa familial love, yung the story of the father and the son, wherein the father and son are each like others, worlds entire, and it is the only and it is only the man's love for the boy that gives him the will to persevere. Their love is generally of the stark, silent kind, as the pairs who, like seasons, consists of surviving from the day of the next. Parang it's all about love, familial love, from the word itself, family, family love, survival and perseverance is the last.
Okay, so for the literary lens that can be used in this story, we have chosen the biographical criticism, wherein this is a form of literary criticism which analyzes a writer's biography to show the relationship between the author's life and their works of literature. It is because napag-alaman natin that this story on the road is actually based on Kerouac's life experiences during the Beat generation or during the 1940s to 1950s. Kaya, we decided that whenever we have used a literary lens for this story, we should use the biographical criticism. Thank you.
So that's all our report, and I hope so that you understand the story.